The Buffalo Bills season ended a couple of weeks ago in Kansas City in the divisional round of the playoffs, and unfortunately for them, it ended in Kansas City in 2020 as well. With how talented their roster is and how good Josh Allen is, every sign points to them hoisting at least one Lombardi trophy in the next half decade or so, if not multiple. And in today's NFL, they are the blueprint for building an NFL team, and this goes back multiple years, and we are going to dive into everything that's taken place over the course of the past few years. So without further ado, let's begin. And when you take a trip back to 2018, and more specifically draft night in 2018, there were 5 quarterbacks drafted in the first round. They, of course, were in order: Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, and Lamar Jackson. All of those guys had different expectations entering the 2018 season. Baker was to be the savior of Cleveland and to let the city have free beer when they won a game. Sam was to save the Jets. Josh Allen was to develop a year or so. Josh Rosen and Steve Wilks were going to lead the desert for the next decade, and Lamar Jackson was also going to develop behind Super Bowl champion winning quarterback Joe Flacco. And with Josh Allen going to Buffalo, he truly had a personality that matched the city, and the same can be said for a couple of other quarterbacks across the NFL. But with Josh, it's a work hard, quiet and be humble type guy. I don't have to let you know I'm here because my play will speak for itself, and you'll know. And that was more evident over the past 2 years than ever before. But back to 2018, and I like to compare 2 quarterbacks from this class and how to build an NFL team and how not to build one, and the ones I compare are Sam Darnold and Josh Allen. Buffalo did everything they possibly could to get Josh weapons and players around him, and it's a lot deeper than just trading for Stephon Diggs. His rookie season, the 2 leading running backs for Buffalo were LaShawn McCoy and Chris Ivory, and in the next 2 drafts, GM Brandon Beane drafted Devin Singletary and Zach Moss. And sure, they're not Jonathan Taylors or Derrick Henrys, but they usually do get the job done. And also back in 2018, the only Bills players to catch a touchdown pass were Zay Jones, Robert Foster, and it gets a lot better, Kelvin Benjamin, Jason Kroom, who are both now out of the league, and wait for it, the final player to catch a touchdown, so 5 total players caught a touchdown for the Bills in 2018, and the final one was tackle Dion Dawkins. Less than 4 years ago, this team was not good, as in 2018 they went 6-10, and they had pretty much 0 weapons for Josh to work with. And Zay Jones isn't bad, to be clear, but do you want him to be your number 1 wide receiver, which is also what players like Davante Adams, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, and Jamar Chase are? No, right? And that offseason they went out in free agency and got 2 veteran options in free agency, and former 1,000-yard receiver John Brown, previously of the Cardinals and Ravens, and Cole Beasley, who is still there today. And they drafted Dawson Knox, who really emerged this year and nearly had double-digit touchdowns for the first time in his career. And having done all of this, combined with building a very good defense that gave up the second fewest points in the NFL in 2019, and the Bills went 10-6. Meanwhile, the division rival Jets, with their prized pick from 2018, they gave Sam Darnold a running back committee of Le'Veon Bell, Bilal Powell, and Ty Montgomery, who collectively averaged 3.3 yards per carry, and his number 1 receiver was Jamison Crowder, who again isn't bad, but like the argument with Zay Jones, is he in the same world as those elites of elites? No, and not surprisingly, when you have a wide receiver 2 step into a wide receiver 1 role and draw as much attention from opposing defenses, they do not produce as much because it is much easier to slow them down. And Sam Darnold also had mono during that year, so that didn't exactly help the situation. And the main point here is the Bills did exactly what you were supposed to do with the young quarterback and have continued to do that with Josh Allen, while the Jets are now on to another quarterback, another head coach, and a new GM. And Joe Douglas did not draft Sam Darnold, so that is where the new GM comment comes into play. In the 2019 postseason, Buffalo was a wild card team as they were still dealing with the remnants of the Patriots dynasty. They did get swept that year by New England in the regular season, and they lost in a very thrilling game in Houston, and that was the Josh Allen lateral game for those that may not remember off the top of your head. And heading into 2020, the Bills knew they needed more help for their budding young quarterback. And in nearly every mock draft, they were always slated someone like Brandon Ayuk or Jalen Reagor or T. Higgins, but right about that time, there was a star receiver coming off of back-to-back 1,000-yard years who was very disgruntled and, for the Bills' benefit, played in an opposing conference. They gladly traded a first-round pick, and a little more was in the trade, don't get me wrong, but the main part was a first-round pick for Stefon Diggs, and all Allen and Diggs did in their first year together was connect on 127 passes for 1,535 yards and 8 touchdowns, and Diggs was a huge part in why they went 13-3 and won their first playoff game in Buffalo in quite some time. And Stefon was also a first-team All-Pro player. The Buffalo Bills beat Phillip Rivers and the Colts and then held Lamar Jackson and the Ravens to just 3 points in a divisional round win, which also included a Taron Johnson pick six. And getting these first 2 playoff wins of the Josh Allen era were especially huge considering they were at home, and unfortunately the Bills Mafia could not be out in full force for either of those wins as it was during the 2020 season, but getting these wins were critical because had they not, then Josh Allen would have been certainly facing the same music Lamar Jackson was, as Lamar himself started out 0-2 in the postseason with a loss in his rookie year to the Chargers, and then had the MVP 14-2 year and lost to the Titans at home. I realize Buffalo wasn't, and really is not, about moral victories, but the 2020 postseason was huge in that aspect due to all of this. And then you run into the big bad Chiefs in their place in the AFC Championship game and lose 38-24. To me, that was kind of like, yeah, so what? It happens. They're the Chiefs. They're one of the best teams collectively we've seen over the past decade. And for Buffalo to go from 6-10 to wildcard round loss to conference championship game appearance is a hell of a 3-year run. And what was even better was Josh Allen went from project to 47 total touchdown player, and the Bills proved in week 5 of 2021 they could not only hang with the Chiefs, but they thumped them in that game, and the final score was 38-20. They were up 31-13 at a point. Josh Allen had 374 total yards and 4 touchdowns, and the vaunted defense even got in the action and had a pick six. Now, it was very unfortunate for Buffalo and their 2021 season to come down to a coin flip and the 13 seconds for the Chiefs to get into field goal range and regulation and every sour part that came with that postseason loss this year. But I stand by this. This is the blueprint for how to build an NFL team. Yes, the Bengals are in the Super Bowl this year, and all the credit in the world goes to them for being able to sweep those big bad Chiefs, which was very much the kryptonite of the rest of the AFC, and was unfortunately something Buffalo could not do in 2021. But it always seems Buffalo gets these key contributors when they need them most, like Gabe Davis, who in the divisional round of the playoffs did everything he possibly could have for a win, and in the process of that game had 8 catches for 201 yards and 4 touchdowns. The Chiefs said, "We're going to take Stefon Diggs away," and Buffalo looked right back at them and said, "By all means, do so." And I feel like it's these little things where you have the next man up, and there isn't even an ounce of hesitation on Buffalo's part to go ahead and say, yeah, let them take Stefon away because we have this thoroughbred in waiting who can just as easily get the job done. And with New England over the past 20 years, you always heard, do your job. And I feel like this example of Gabe Davis stepping up when called upon, not just once in the red zone or even twice, but to have a playoff record 4 touchdowns, shows how much everyone in this locker room and organization buys into what head coach Sean McDermott and GM Brandon Beane are preaching. And I fully realize this video may come across as controversial, especially with how the Bills season ended, but the process in which they built this team is one that should be replicated across the NFL. Yes, Josh Allen is an outlier for how elite of a player he has become, because no one saw that coming back in 2018, but from building a defense and having an all-pro corner in Trey White, and who knows if he plays in the divisional round if they win, unfortunately he was out with a torn ACL, and a multiple-time Pro Bowl linebacker in Tremaine Edmonds, to getting a good veteran safety, and 2 really, in Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer in free agency, and then you see them now building the defensive lineup with Ed Oliver, Greg Rousseau, and Boogie Basham. This is truly the model for how to build an NFL team. Draft good, and then build supplemental through free agency. And if in the chance they don't win a Super Bowl with this core over the next few years, because unfortunately that is possible, I still stand with this being the blueprint for how to build a roster from the ground up. Buffalonians deserve a Super Bowl, and I really, really hope Josh Allen and company can deliver in 2022. And with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, now is the time I ask you to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because it would truly mean the world. Until next time, smash a table if you're watching this late in the video, Bills Mafia, and have a great day. Love you guys.